Hi guys, this is Bison, your host, and today's game is absolute madness. Garry Kasparov keeps sacrificing material as if it doesn't even matter, and somehow every single move makes his attack even stronger. And trust me, you don't want to miss the final combination. Let's get started. So game starts with e4, c5. Here Kasparov starts with the Sicilian defense. Knight to f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight to c6, adding pressure to the d4 knight. And guys, this is known as Taimanov variation. And after that, here Vitaly develops his another knight on c3, solidifying the center. So that's why d6, a flexible move that supports the e5 square. And in the next move, this bishop can be developed to d7. g3, preparing for bishop to g2, knight to f6, bishop to g2, bishop to d7. And after that, finally, Vitaly castled. Bishop to e7. And you can see in the next move, Kasparov is also going to castle, but a4. And you can see he pushed a4 so that he can stop this pawn from, getting further. And finally, he decides to castle. Knight at c goes to e2. And you can see, in the next move, here white is going to push c4, but rook to c8. And, Kasparov placed his rook to the semi-open file. c3. Vitaly defends the knight, as well as he is preparing for knight to b5, which puts some pressure over the d6 pawn, which is supported by the queen. So to stop this, a6. And by seeing that, Vitaly also pushed h3 so that he can stop this knight from coming to g4. Queen to c7, and you can see in the next move, black is going to push d5. But here Vitaly pushed g4, which indicates he is going to play g5, which is going to attack this knight. But Kasparov goes according to his plan. He wants to open the center. E takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, e takes d5. And now you can see black can, bring his bishop to d6, which eyes the h2 square. So to stop this, Vitaly brings his knight to f4, which targets the d5 pawn. But instead of defending, here Kasparov plays bishop to c5, putting some pressure to the d4 knight. And let's suppose in this position, if white decides to capture the pawn on d5 with knight takes d5, which attacks the queen. But first of all, black is going to play queen to e5, which attacks the both knights. So to defend this, here the best move is to bring this knight to e2 so that he can defend this knight with the queen. But then rook at f goes to e8, putting some pressure over the knight. And if knight to f4, then rook to c8. And with the idea of bishop to e6, which attacks the knight, as well as as well as it also pins that. And clearly you can see this position will be better for black because of this active queen and the connected rooks, which are going to tear apart the white structure. Okay, so let me go back to the move, which is bishop to c5. Yep. So now the thing is, what's the best move for white in this position? And guys, here the best move for white is to consider the move knight to f5. Okay, so the first thing, the first thing which we can understand by this move is here white gets away from the attack which was created on d4. And the second thing is this invites black to play some forced move. And obviously black can't afford this knight to stay on f5, and also black can't push g6 because this will create weakness on the king side. So that's why here black will definitely go for bishop takes f5, because so after g takes f5, and in the end you can see now white has this shattered pawn structure. So, and by this black will be better. And guys, yes, that's true, but the thing is, it's not so easy for black to attack. I mean, just take a look at the white queen, which can anytime get on g4, and so which directly targets the black king. And also white is also targeting the pawn on d5. So let's say if black decides to advance this pawn further, then knight to h5. with the same idea of knight to g4, which attacks which attacks on g7. And guys, that's the main idea of pushing the pawn. Basically, this pawn push activates all of the white pieces. Okay, so let's continue. Let's say if knight to e5, so that he can stop this queen from coming to g4, but then bishop to f4, pinning the knight. And if d takes e3, b takes e3. And but rook at f goes to d8 if he tries to attack the queen, but then queen to e2, putting immense pressure on the bishop. So let's say to defend this, if this bishop goes back to d6, then rook at a goes to d1. And guys, now if black tries to grab the pawn on c3, because this move also guards the knight, but in this position now white can sacrifice his rook with rook takes d6. The idea is if rook takes d6, then bishop takes e5, and you can see in the next move white is going to get back his piece. But let's say if he tries to pin the bishop, but then bishop takes c3, rook takes e2, and finally bishop takes g7. And when the dust settles, you can see this position is better for white. I mean, this rook can now get on c1 with the idea of rook to c8 check. That's amazing. Okay, so in the game after bishop to c5, let me go back. So here Vitaly goes for knight to b3. He basically brings his knight back, attacking the bishop, which first of all doesn't look like a bad move. But guys, as you can see by this, he just keeps his knight away from this active square. So that's why this is a slight inaccuracy. So since this bishop is attacked, so Kasparov brings it on a7, and after that here the best move for white is to consider knight to h5, but instead he goes for queen takes d5. And the problem with that move is now Kasparov just plays bishop to e6, attacking the queen. And after knight takes e6, f takes e6, and guys, now this is important. Here white cannot capture the e6 pawn with the queen, because this is losing. Why? Because after king to h8, in the next move you can see black is going to give a check from g3 square, taking benefit of the pinned f2 pawn. So let's say to defend this, if white brings his queen to e4 with the idea of queen to g2 if black if black tries to give a check, but then rook at c goes to e8, black can now attack this queen. And after this queen goes to g2, now I just want you all to pause the video and just try to think what can black play in this position. And guys, in this position black can play this amazing move, rook takes f2. The idea is if rook takes f2, that will be a blunder, because first of all black is going to give a check from e1 square, and after queen to f1, queen to g3 check, king to h1, rook takes f1 check, rook takes f1, and finally queen takes h3, and that's a mate. So that's why after this move, so here Vitaly brings his queen to e4. He doesn't capture the pawn, with the same idea of defending it if black gives a check from g3 square. But guys, in this position Kasparov sacrificed his rook with rook takes f2, completely shattering the white defense. And after rook takes f2, now he gives a check from g3 square. And after queen to g2, bishop takes f2 check. And as you can see, now there are two options left for the white king. So let's say if this king goes to h1, then queen to g3, preparing to give a check from d1 square. And let's say if white decides to grab the bishop, then rook to f8, attacking the queen. And if if he blocks with the bishop, then queen takes h3 check, king to g1, queen takes g4 check, queen to g3, rook takes f4, queen takes g4, rook takes g4 check. And now just take a look at these pawns. No need to tell that who is winning in this position. Okay, so in the game after bishop takes f2, here basically Vitaly slides his king to f1. And in this position, the final, so in this position here, Kasparov played this beautiful move, queen to e5, completely sacrificing the bishop, which obviously white can't capture due to the threat of rook to f8 check. And if he grabs with the king, then again the same check from f8 square, and in the few moves black is going to mate. So that's why he blocks with bishop to f4. Queen takes f4, queen takes f2, and in this position the final move by Kasparov is queen to c4 check, and in this position Vitaly resigned, because after king to g1, queen takes b3, and you can see here black is a full piece up. What a game, guys. Seriously, how do you even calculate something like this over the board? I mean, Kasparov's sacrifices were not just beautiful, they were perfectly timed. That's exactly what separates legend from everyone else. Like this video and I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.